I'm Stefan Baumann, and I want to welcome you to another video. Now, what I've been doing is I wrote a book on painting outdoors called The Ultimate Plein Air Field Guide to Outdoor Painting. And in this particular video, we talk about doing nocturnes and moon scenes and how to make moon scenes. We talk about temperature. We talk about safety hints with working with oils as opposed to acrylics and watercolors. In this in this brief video, we even talk about how to improve your paintings by painting on panels as opposed to canvas and why. So just sit back and enjoy this video. You're going to learn not one thing, not two things, but five things. And again, that's just a portion of just one book club. And we have a book club meeting every month. So sit back, relax, and be impressed with what you're going to learn. So what were you thinking?
This was actually before I ever discovered you. So it would be interesting to hear your take on this.
Okay.
I had no idea of the keys or anything like that.
And how long were you fiddling before you got a hold of me?
Um, 40 years,
40 years. Yeah,
a
that's what
long
the
time.
so she's one of my coaching students, but you could sit and guess for 40 years, and all of a sudden you go, oh. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so basically last time we talked about rainbows, and rainbows are cool. And they usually are surrounded by a warm background. And that's how you get rainbows to pop. And I put that up on YouTube. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people are like, oh my God, it's just wow. In order for the moon to really glow, it is getting warm colors next to cool colors. So if we actually look at that moon, it's actually a very cool color, and it's completely surrounded by warm color. Value painters would paint the background like you did here. See, this is a value painting. And you can see, yeah, you did a little darker around the moon, and then you kind of like added white to that to make it like a moon. It's like, and it doesn't, see how that illuminates? That's temperature happening. This is all warm. In fact, if you look at it, you actually see a tinge of brown in it. Yeah, it's kind of a brownish purplish. And remember, purple is also a warm color. And then you have this beautiful illuminated color. And then it's like the rainbow, it stands out. When you put warm and cools next to each other, they stand out. If you're doing a face and it's predominantly, kind of cool colors, kind of in shadow, you want to make sure your background's warm. And if you're doing a face that is basically warm colors, which most portraits are, you want to make sure your background is cool, and that causes the figure to come off the canvas. And a lot of times people go, why is my painting so chalky or why is it so muddy? It's because you're not separating your warm
Mhm.
and cool. And when you get this, you go, why don't people talk about this? It's not even common sense because it's bass backwards. But when you figure this out, then you can get this popping sound, that popping look. Now, she painted the moon bigger, and that's the experience we have. A lot of times you'll go out and take pictures of the moon on a beautiful clear night, and you get your picture back, and the moon's really
Mhm.
cool. And when you get this, you go, why don't people talk about this? It's not even common sense because it's bass backwards. But when you figure this out, then you can get this popping sound, that popping look. She painted the moon bigger, and that's the experience we have. A lot of times you'll go out and take pictures of the moon on a beautiful, clear night, and you get your picture back, and the moon's really tiny all the way back there. But you go, wow, it was really big when I saw it. And that's because our brain tends to pull things towards us.
Mhm.
And you see a lot of times in movies when all of a sudden somebody gets this idea and they realize, uh-oh, I'm going to be screwed. The background kind of goes forward and the face stays whole. It's kind of like your brain just kind of like, does that and vice versa. And so you want to kind of get that when we're looking at something, we have a tendency to pull it forward. Cameras have a tendency to push back. So here you painted the feeling of what it feels like to be in front of the moon more so than what your camera captured there. And so that's a really good thing. Very few artists actually end up doing that.
Yes.
What were you thinking?
Well, I was trying to get the glow around the moon, I guess, in both scenarios. And in the one on the right, I tried to put the clouds in around it, just swirling kind of around it. And I'm trying to paint without solvents, and I'm just trying to use like I guess I'm using walnut oil instead of linseed oil paint. So I'm trying to learn how to use my medium is what I'm trying to do.
So why
And
are you using walnut oil instead of linseed oil?
I'm real sensitive to smells, and I think the linseed oil gives me headaches. So I
The thing
found
that would
some.
give you headaches, because linseed oil doesn't evaporate. So the thing that gives you headaches is actually the turpentine. That's evaporation. That's what you get. Your walnut oil and your linseed oil are basically just kind of oil. It's a drying. It dries in that. And surprisingly, if you want to know, it's like most people are not allergic to linseed oil because it's in everything. So you wouldn't be able to sit on a chair. You wouldn't be able to sit in your car because linseed oil is kind of a base for a lot of our petroleum products and things that it's just like everywhere. Now, walnut oil, if you are sensitive to nuts, which a lot of people are, walnut oil is not a good idea because, obviously walnuts and peanuts and things. So a lot of people are sensitive to that. So yeah, I would pretty much say, and then there are turpentines and stuff that are and not so lethal, but we won't get into that. But I want you to take a look at what you did on the left-hand side. First thing, get away. People go, God, Stefan, you're so into like panels. It's like, look at that panel that you're painting on. Look at those textures. I mean, do you think those textures add anything to a painting? And yet,
No,
all of those little textures that are on that canvas are diluting the luminous quality of what you could get. So it's kind of like looking, a woman's face is so beautiful and she glows because they usually have thinner pores. But you look at some, cowboy who's out on a ranch, he's got these beaked pores and pot marks. Their face doesn't illuminate as well. So, these pores, that light bounces and shadows bounces and it ruins the luminosity. So don't paint on this because this is ugly, And then we look at what's around it. So if we look at what we just talked about, cerulean blue is a cool color, and you can see you're going around your moon with cerulean blue. And consequently, when you squint your eyes, there's no moon there. There's like squint your eyes, it just disappears, it falls off. Here, what you have is a little bit more of a warmer color. Look at that. And it's causing the light to be a little bit more luminous. You just have too much white in it. You got to give it a little bit of lemon yellow or cerulean blue or give it a color, make sure it's cool. And you could have gone a half a value to a full value darker in the background to give the moon a little bit more pop, like what we just saw on the horse. So here again, two temperatures are crucial. You're using your three cool colors. I love your eye magnets in that. That looks good. You guys, when you learn this, you will grow. You will change. And the thing is, I stumbled upon, I didn't invent it because the old guys used to do it this way. But this will change your painting once you get that highlights or light sources are cool. And this is a moon. So everything in there that the light is hitting should be cool. Yeah, cerulean, phthalo blue, those are cool blues. Cerulean manganese blue or cyan. Those are
Okay.
cool blues. And so, it's amazing how and yeah, and it's not your fault at all. Was giving a lecture to my students now. You think I'm intense. Wait till you actually sit in a room with me and I'm critiquing paintings and I'm going through 30 paintings during our lunch hour. And I'm pushing this and pushing this and pushing this. And this student sat in my classes for 5 years and she's kind of laying there yeah, eating her sandwich and kind of bored. And at some point, she looked up at me and she goes, What do you mean highlights are cool? After 5 years of listening to me saying that, and everybody kind of picked up a tube of paint or an orange or something and threw it at her. because I mean, by 5 years, you should have heard it. But when things are right in front of you, and that's the problem that I see out there with people who are painting, is that they automatically go to a value thing and they don't see the highlight as a cool color because in their heads, their mom told them that, when it's cold outside, you have to get warm. And so it's like, and vice versa. It's not how things feel, it's how we see them. And we don't even see them. And Mrs. Gugolinski said, paint what you see. And I was like, oh, I need more information than that, old lady. I said, give me something I could use. And she said, just paint what you see. But you have to understand what it is that we're looking at. And if you're looking at a moon thing and you're thinking, I'm going to add ultramarine blue to it, there's the problem. You have to change the way you start seeing things. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. Like my students do that I coach. Is like all of a sudden they go, oh my God.
Oh,
Before we went into coaching, when I first saw this and we were doing coaching, your moon was actually more luminous.
yes.
And then you had the moon sitting in front of the mountain. And I said, oh,
Yeah.
but I said, don't touch it. But what did you do? You touched it. And in the
I,
process of that, you kind of muddied it up. You almost picked up the colors of the background. And that moon was much more luminous before than it is now.
that's what I was going to say. I'm not too happy with the moon.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
gorgeous during our coaching call.
Yes,
And the thing
I
is,
know.
it was in front of the mountains, which is wrong, but it was very posterish. And I
Yes.
don't think you had all of this stuff in the front. So I kind of liked it better before. And I think we need to make the foreground much darker. Um,
Okay.
so this, look at how that glows. You don't have any of the warm colors in there. And so you kind of muddied it up a bit. Well, let's just talk about this. Not your painting's wrong. It says this. And so what's the problem with this is that we got two central focal points. Yeah, if you would have had the lamp kind of broken out there and you would have had more of the moon thing, there would have been probably a little bit better painting. But because we have two separate focal points, we're not enjoying the scene like before because we usually want one focal point. We're going back and forth, and both those focal points are demanding our attention. So you got to kind of remember that when you go out there, a moonscape is kind of on its own. And the light from a moon is so subtle that you don't want to have it compete with nocturne painting. And then if you notice, your left brain is sitting there going, oh, the shadows and stuff have to be like a violet or a purple. But when we actually look at the shadows, I mean, this is why I say the world shows up as warm. Look at how brown these tones are and brown black. They're not blue, they're brown black. Now you're doing purple. Purple is a warm color,
Mhm.
so that will be fine for a background tone. But all in all, the color is almost distracting. We're actually sitting here because it's the only thing that has color. Our brain's like going, well, that's interesting, and that's interesting. And so you got to be really careful that when you're communicating to people's worlds, what is it that you want to say?
Mhm.
Yeah, but hey, you get kudos for jumping in. You haven't quite got the book yet, but we've had some history together. So here is the Aurora Borealis here. And just very quickly, but here again, too, we're looking at light. And when light dissipates into shadow, it gets warm. And so this light that we see here is all generated out of lemon yellow, cerulean blue. Here we have magenta. They're all very cool colors. And they pop because look at these warm colors that are surrounding here. This green actually starts to turn into almost like a sap green, a warm green, as opposed to the light green in here. And when you squint your eyes, you can see the difference of the light, the cool light, and then the warm colors going back. Right. So Chris this morning, she's one of my coaching students, and she didn't send me the original picture, but she sent me the painting. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I said, but you got to send me the picture you jumped off of because, part of painting is being creative. Part of painting is not duplicating what you see, it's adding stuff into it. So, like where we see it, so she's jumping off of this, and first thing this morning, I get that. And I'm like looking at it going, wow, that's really something. And so I asked her, well, what was, the inspiration for this? And she showed me that other picture. And I looked at it and I go, it's kind of missing something. So I very quickly, should be right here. Yeah. So I put in a sun in there, for the sunset. Now, I have very limited, if I would have sat there and I would have arranged it and, kind of got it half hidden and then, put the clouds over it. But when you give the viewer something to anchor on, like a sunset like this, it's very dramatic. Now, the first sunset that we actually saw was where she jumped. And then this is kind of what she came up with. And this is watercolor. And when I looked at her version of it, usually anything that you want to do is, can you see in her version,
It's
there's
really
actually
there.
a sun in there.
Mm-hmm.
Really look. And so one of the things that I teach is nuance painting. And nuance painting basically is putting things in and then jumping off of them. And when I saw this morning, half asleep because she calls me at 5 in the morning, I looked at it, and go, oh man, it looks like a Turner painting with, that moon, that sun
Mm-hmm.
kind of peeking through there. It's like, oh, I love it. So she says, what sun? And I put in that sun and did that real quick. It's like, that's nuance painting when actually the painting tells you what it wants to be. And a lot of times what happens with us as artists is that we kind of want to, demand it. It's like, I command you. And yet there's a genius out there that's whispering in your ear going, no, look at that effect back there. It actually is a sense. So a lot of times your paintings will dictate to you what they want to be. They kind of, and you can kind of see that just putting in an anchor or a highlight like that, not so dark, but we fiddle. I mean, not so bright, but definitely a cool color to warm. So we're kind of doing these transition colors, and for your homework assignment, what I want all of you to do for our next book club is to actually create a sunset like these colors. Now look at what we're doing here. We got cool colors around the sun. Um, we got cooler colors, more lemon yellow, and then going into warmer tones and warmer. Now these background warm oranges have to be made out of cool colors. So the oranges that we actually see in the distance have to be made out of phthalo red, rose, and lemon yellow. And then we slowly transition into a warmer color as we get away from the light. But if the light's actually sitting around the sun, we're going to go with a little bit darker value, but we're going to go with an orange that is definitely made up of two cool colors. Now, when I was with Lori Putman at the Plein Air Convention in Denver, we were sitting there critiquing paintings, and I said, "Oh, Lori," I said, "Yeah," and I was telling the group, I said, "Remember this before we left." I said, "Remember, highlights are always cool." And Lori turned around and looked at me and gave me this growl. She said, "No, they're not." And I said, "Yes, they are. They're always cool." And she turned to me and she said, "Well, what about an orange sunset?" And I go, yes, even in an orange sunset, because the orange that you would actually make would be made of a phthalo red rose or permanent red rose, a cool red, and then a cool yellow. And those two colors together will make you a cool orange, different than if you have orange that would be in the foreground. So,
Um,
huh?
a good example of that is on page 176. Or is that sunset that I painted and I put warm orange and cool orange, and you can see right in the painting which is working and which isn't.
Yeah. Well, we'll end up looking at that. But if go to 176, Mary, while we were doing the book, she was challenging me the whole time. She's like, well, let me play her with that a little bit. Like last time she was doing the rainbows because she didn't do a rainbow for the book because we didn't include it. But we did talk about that. So 176, we talk about this and creating a sunset. And again, it's the same thing as a moon painting. It's the same thing as a rainbow painting. Light is always cool. And I'm trying to drive this concept into your head. Even if you're looking at orange, and it's illuminated with light, it's going to be cool. It's always cool. It's always, always, always. And when I told that to Lori, and I turned to her and I said, "Oh, you know what's going to blow you away, Lori?" And she like looked at me. She said, "What?" But the thing is, light is always cool. Shadows are always warm. And even people who are painting warm shadows don't see them as warm. And Mrs. Kuglinski said, paint what you see. It's just that we don't know what it is that we're looking at. And so knowing what you're looking at is crucial. This and here, these keys, these keys in here, they give us the foundation of actually starting to look at something. And once we start look at something, we can start recreating it. But if your seed, your shadows is cool, you can imagine how long that would take to flush out of your brain. It took me 30 years. And students are looking at my old videos and they go, well, in your PBS, that was 25 years ago. I said, yeah, my PBS, I sat there because I heard Richard Schmidt tell me that shadows were cool. And I heard all these other artists say shadows are cool. But finally, one day I just figured it out. I sat there and I said, I got to figure this out. And I finally figured it out. It transformed. Without that key that I'm trying to teach you here, I wouldn't be able to coach on the phone. There's a lot to do with it, but that literally was the foundation. And that's why when you start coaching with me, it's the first thing we go through. And I have you exercise that until you know it. And we just keep on working on it, keep on working on it. And this is something you could be doing. Now, wasn't that everything I told you? Yes, there's so many things to think about. The problem with artists is that they don't know what they don't know. And if you kind of get that, yeah, you could watch a lot of people paint, but seriously, there's a lot of information you need to know. You need to know this before you even go outdoors to look at something. So I highly recommend to go ahead and get my book. If not, you might be ready for coaching. So give me a call at 415-606-9074 and consider coaching. It's amazing. Because of the popularity, just opened up my calendar for some new students. So you want to take advantage of that. But if coaching seems to be a little bit too much, you might decide that you want to go into a workshop. And I have workshops in the spring and the fall. If you go to my website, if you go to my website, www.stefanbaumann.com, there you can get more information about the workshops and what we do with that. But if you don't want to get involved with the workshops and that's too much, and you want to buy the book, definitely, because that covers a lot of stuff. But you could join my Patreon group. My Patreon group, it meets every Saturday. It's awesome. You can go to Patreon. I also have podcasts for those of you that want to drive around listening to me. I know I talk too much. Anyway, so go out and enjoy yourselves. Go paint and be part of this. And I'll see you at the next video. I'm Stefan Baumann, and I would love to introduce you to a new book that I just wrote on plein air painting. After 40 years, I finally sat down with one of the best authors that I could possibly imagine for this project and put together everything I know about painting outdoors. And this isn't just an outdoor painting book. No, these are techniques that you can bring into the studio, and they apply to watercolors, acrylics, gouache, and oil. You will be amazed at what you will learn with every turn of the page, every paragraph. We have worked through my videos, my information, my books, my blogs, and brought it all together. And over 2 years of editing, we brought it down to just the facts. This painting book has over 400 pages and almost 500 illustrations. If you see my videos and if you read my blog and you follow me on YouTube, you know that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things you don't know that you don't know. I'm amazed at the quality of this book, the pages. It's a field guide. It's a book that you would take outdoors with you and paint on location. It's been organized so you could find your way through my keys. This book explains 40 years of teaching and knowledge one-on-one. All the information that I possibly know about painting is in this book. So run, don't walk, and order this book today.
Get this book. It's awesome!